Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. I'm sorry I'm a little late tonight, but just as we were about to log on, we couldn't log on because someone tried to log on from somewhere in Mexico, and we had to call Divide, who owns this account, and he changed the password. And here we are, because Divide is Mr. Reliable. He always seems to be there whenever I need him. I never have to wait. Hare Krishna. All right, here we are again at the live studios in The Haven, Hythe, Kent, UK. C221, 6DY. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur loved the Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, and he made this poetic comment. In due course, Mahäprabhu, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or, if you cannot hold all three, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. For if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage, because after it has subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastra. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda. Okay, we've reached the 8th chapter of Madhya-lila, and we are right in the middle of the conversation between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rämänanda Roy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking the questions, and Rämänanda Roy is giving the answers. And he's reached a stage of discussion of Krishna consciousness in which Rämänanda Roy says he doesn't know anything about it. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking through him. So he continues to speak, even though he says he doesn't know anything about it. Starting with text 139. The very name Krishna means that he attracts even Cupid. He is therefore attractive to everyone, male and female, moving and inert living entities. Indeed, Krishna is known as the all-attractive one. Purport. Just as there are many orbs in the material world called stars or planets, in the spiritual world there are many spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. The spiritual universe, however, is situated far, far away from the cluster of material universes. Material scientists cannot even estimate the number of planets and stars within this universe. They are also incapable of traveling to other stars by spaceship. According to the Bhagavad Gita 8.20, there is also a spiritual world. Parastasmat dubhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yaksasarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu navinashyati. Yet there is another unmanifested nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. Thus there is another nature, which is superior to material nature. The word bhava, or swabhava, refers to nature. The spiritual nature is eternal, and even when all the material universes are destroyed, the planets in the spiritual world abide. They remain exactly as the spirit soul remains, even after the annihilation of the material body. That spiritual world is called the aprakrita, anti-material world. In this transcendental spiritual world or universe, the highest planetary system is known as Goloka Vrindavan. That is the abode of Lord Krishna himself, who is also all spiritual. Krishna is known there as Aprakrita Madana. Aprakrita Madana. The name Madana refers to Cupid, but Krishna is the spiritual Madana. His body is not material, like the body of Cupid in this material universe. Krishna's body is all spiritual, Satchidananda Vigraha. Therefore he is called Aprakrita Madana. He is also known as Manmata Madana, which means that he is attractive even to Cupid. Sometimes Krishna's activities and attractive features are misinterpreted by gross materialists who accuse him of being immortal because sometimes Krishna's activities and attractive features are misinterpreted by gross materialists who accuse him of being immoral because he danced with the gopis. But such an accusation results from not knowing that Krishna is beyond this material world. His body is Satchidananda Vigraha, completely spiritual. There is no material contamination in his body, and one should not consider his body a lump of flesh and bones. The Mayavadi philosophers conceive of Krishna's body as material, and this is an abominable, grossly materialistic conception. Just as Krishna is completely spiritual, the gopis are also spiritual, and this is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 537. Ananda Chinmayarasa Pratibhabitabis Tabir Yaeva Nijarupataya Kalabihi Goloka Eva Nivasat Yakilatma Bhuto Govinda Maripurusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord. He resides in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure and who embodies the ecstatic potency, Ladhini. Their companions are her confidants, who embody extensions of her bodily form and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. The gopis are also of the same spiritual quality, Nija Rupataya, because they are expansions of Krishna's pleasure potency. Neither Krishna nor the gopis have anything to do with lumps of matter or the material conception. In the material world, the living entity is encaged within a material body, and due to ignorance, he thinks that he is the body. Therefore here the enjoyment of lusty desires between male and female is all material. One cannot compare the lusty desires of a materialistic man to the transcendental lusty desires of Krishna. Unless one is advanced in spiritual science, he cannot understand the lusty desires between Krishna and the gopis. In the Caitanya-caritämrta, the lusty desire of the gopis is compared to gold. The lusty desires of a materialistic man, on the other hand, are compared to iron. At no stage can iron and gold be equal. The living entities, moving and non-moving, are part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, they originally have the same kind of lusty desire as his. But when this lusty desire is expressed through matter, it is abominable. When a living entity is spiritually advanced and liberated from material bondage, he can understand Krishna in truth. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mam eti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. When one can understand the body of Krishna as well as the Lord's lusty desires, one is immediately liberated. A conditioned soul encaged within the material body cannot understand Krishna. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7.3, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatiti siddhaye yatitam apisiddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. The word siddhaye indicates liberation. Only after being liberated from material conditioning can one understand Krishna. When one can understand Krishna, he is tatvataha. One actually lives in the spiritual world, although apparently living within the material body. This technical science can be understood when one is actually spiritually advanced. In his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.187, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa gira nikilasvapyabastasu jivan mukta sa uchate. When a person in this material world desires only to serve Krishna with love and devotion, he is liberated even though functioning within this material world. As the Bhagavad Gita 14.26 confirms, Mam chayo vyabhicharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Simply by engaging in the loving service of the Lord, one can attain liberation. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 18.54, Brahma bhuta prasanatma nashochati nakangshati. A person who is highly advanced in spiritual knowledge and who has attained the Brahma bhuta stage neither laments nor hankers for anything material. That is the stage of spiritual realization. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur considers the Brahma bhuta stage in two divisions, Sarup Gata and Vastu Gata. One who has understood Krishna in truth, but is still maintaining some material connection, is known to be situated in his Sarupa, his original consciousness. When that original consciousness is completely spiritual, it is called Krishna consciousness. One who lives in such consciousness is actually living in Vrindavan. He may live anywhere. Material location doesn't matter. When by the grace of Krishna one thus advances, he becomes completely uncontaminated by the material body and mind, and at that time factually lives in Vrindavan. That stage is called Vastu Gata. One should execute his spiritual activities in the Sarup Gata stage of consciousness. He should also chant such spiritual mantras as Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya and the Chinmayi Gayatri, Kling Krishnaya Govindaya Gopi Jana Balabhaya Swaha, and Kling Kamanivaya Vidmahe Pushpa Bhanaya Dhimahi Tannon Nanga Prachodayat. prachodayat. These are the Kama Gayatri or Kama Bij mantras. One should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master and worship Krishna with these transcendental mantras. As explained by Krishnadas, Kaviraj Goswami, in the previous verse and the current verse, Vrindavane aprakrita navina madana Kama Gayatri Kama Bije Yanra Upasana Purusha Yoshit Kiva Stavada Jangama Sarva Chittat Karshaka Shakshat Manmata Madana. A person who is properly purified and initiated by a spiritual master worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna by chanting this mantra, the Kama Gayatri, with the Kama Bij. As the Bhagavad Gita 1865 confirms, one should engage in transcendental worship in order to be fit for being attracted by Krishna, the all-attractive. Manmana bhavamad bhakto majjaji mam namaskuru mami vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you are my very dear friend. Since every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, Krishna is naturally attractive. Due to the material covering, one's attraction for Krishna is checked. One is not usually attracted by Krishna in the material world. But as soon as one is liberated from material conditioning, he is naturally attracted. Therefore it is said in this verse, Sarva Chitta Karshaka. Sarva Chitta Karshaka. Everyone is naturally attracted by Krishna. Sarva Chitta Karshaka. Sarva Chitta Karshaka. This attraction is within everyone's heart. And when the heart is cleansed, that attraction is manifested. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Maha Davagni Nirvapanam. Text 140. When Krishna left the Rasa-lila dance, the gopis became very morose. And when they were grieving, Krishna reappeared dressed in yellow garments, wearing a flower garland and smiling. He was attractive even to Cupid. In this way, Krishna appeared among the gopis. Purport. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:32-2. Text 141. Each and every devotee has a certain type of transcendental mellow in relation to Krishna. But in the transcendental relationships, the devotee is the worshipper, ashraya, and Krishna is the object of worship, vishaya. 142. Akila Rasamrita Murti Prashmarchana Ruchi Ruda Taraka Pali Kalita Shama Lalito Radha Priyan Vidurjayati. Let Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, be glorified. By virtue of his expanding, attractive features, he subjugated the gopis named Taraka and Pali, and absorbed the minds of Shama and Lalita. He is the most attractive lover of Srimati Radharani, and is the reservoir of pleasure for devotees in all transcendental mellows. Purport. Everyone has a particular transcendental mellow by which he loves and serves Krishna. Krishna is the most attractive feature for every kind of devotee. He is therefore called Akila Rasamrita Murti, the transcendental form of attraction for all kinds of devotees, whether the devotee be in the Shanta Ras, Dasya Ras, Sakya Ras, Vatsalya Ras, or Madhurya Ras. This is the opening verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. Text 143. Krishna is all attractive for devotees in all mellows, because he is the personification of the conjugal mellow. Krishna is attractive not only to all the devotees, but to himself as well. My dear friends, just see how Sri Krishna is enjoying the season of spring. With the gopis embracing each of his limbs, he is like amorous love personified. With his transcendental pastimes, he enlivens all the gopis and the entire creation. With his soft bluish-black arms and legs, which resemble blue lotus flowers, he has created a festival for Cupid. Purport. This is a verse from the Gita Govinda 1:11. Text 145. He also attracts Narayana, who is the incarnation of Sankarshan and the husband of the goddess of fortune. He attracts not only Narayana, but also all women, headed by the goddess of fortune, the consort of Narayana. 146. Addressing Krishna and Arjuna, Lord Mahavishnu, the Mahapurusha, said, I wanted to see both of you, and therefore I have brought the sons of the Brahmana here. Both of you have appeared in the material world to re-establish religious principles, and you have both appeared here with all your potencies. After killing all the demons, please quickly return to the spiritual world. Purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:89-58, concerning Krishna's endeavor to take Arjuna beyond the material universe when Arjuna was searching for the sons of a Brahmana. Just a minute. Lord Mahavishnu, who is situated beyond this material world, was also attracted by the bodily features of Krishna. Mahavishnu had actually stolen the sons of the Brahmana in Dwarka so that Krishna and Arjuna would come visit him. This verse is quoted to show that Krishna is so attractive that he attracts Mahavishnu. Text 147. O Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya attained such an opportunity to be touched by the dust of your lotus feet. For this end, the goddess of fortune performed austerities for centuries, giving up all other desires and observing austere vows. Indeed, we do not know how this serpent Kaliya got such an opportunity. Purport. This verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:16-36 was spoken by the wives of the Kaliya serpent. 148. Lord Krishna's sweetness is so attractive that it steals away his own mind. Thus, even he wants to embrace himself. Hmm. 149. Upon seeing his own reflection in a bejeweled pillar of his Dwaraka palace, Krishna desired to embrace it, saying, Alas, I have never seen such a person before. Who is he? Just by seeing him, I have become eager to embrace him, exactly like Srimati Radharani. Very interesting, huh? He's in Dwarka. seeing in the pillar the reflection, and he thinks about Radharani. Purport. This is a verse from Srila Rupa Goswami's Lalita Madhava. (834). Text 150. Sri Rämänanda Roy said, Sri Rämänanda Roy then said, I have thus briefly explained the original form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now let me describe the position of Srimati Radharani. Text 151. Krishna has unlimited potencies, which can be divided into three main parts. These are the spiritual potency, the material potency, and the marginal potency, which is known as the living entities. Text 153. 152. In other words, these are all potencies of God, internal, external, and marginal. But the internal potency is the Lord's personal energy and stands above the other two. 153. Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Chetragya Kya Tata Para Abidya Karma Sangyanya Tritiya Shaktir Ishate. The original potency of Lord Vishnu is superior, or spiritual, and the living entity actually belongs to that superior energy. But there is another energy, called the material energy, and this third energy is full of ignorance. Purport. This is a quotation from the Vishnu Purana 6.7.61. Originally, Lord Krishna is Satchidananda Vigraha, the transcendental form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Therefore, his personal potency, the internal potency, has three different forms. 155. Hladini is his aspect of bliss, Sandini of eternal existence, and Sambit of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. Text 156. Hladini Sandini Sambit Tvai Eka Sarvasang Shaye Lada Tapakari Mishra Twayi no Gunavarjite. My dear Lord, you are the transcendental reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Your pleasure potency, existence potency, and knowledge potency are actually all one internal spiritual potency. The conditioned soul, although actually spiritual, sometimes experiences pleasure, sometimes pain, and sometimes a mixture of pain and pleasure. This is due to his being touched by matter. But because you are above all material qualities, these are not found in you. Your superior spiritual potency is completely transcendental. And for you, there is no such thing as relative pleasure, pleasure mixed with pain, or pain itself. Purport. This is a quotation from the Vishnu Purana, 112.69. 157. The potency called Hladini gives Krishna transcendental pleasure. Through this pleasure potency, Krishna personally tastes all spiritual pleasure. Text 158. Lord Krishna tastes all kinds of transcendental happiness, although he himself is happiness personified. The pleasure relished by his pure devotees is also manifested by his pleasure potency. Text 159. The most essential part of this pleasure potency is love of Godhead, prema. Consequently, the explanation of love of Godhead is also a transcendental mellow, full of pleasure. We're going to want to hear this one again. The most essential part of this pleasure potency is love of Godhead, prema. Consequently, the explanation of love of Godhead is also a transcendental mellow, full of pleasure. It's this, in this way we can actually get transcendental pleasure, by hearing about the pleasure potency explained by a proper source. Text 160. The essential part of love of Godhead is called Mahabhava, transcendental ecstasy. And that ecstasy is represented by Srimati Radharani. Text 161. Among the gopis of Vrindavan, Srimati Radharani and another gopi are considered chief. But when we compare the gopis, it appears that Srimati Radharani is most important, because her real feature expresses the highest ecstasy of love. The ecstasy of love experienced by the other gopis cannot be compared to that of Srimati Radharani. Purport. This is a quotation from Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani, Radha Prakarana 3. Text 162. The body of Srimati Radharani is a veritable transformation of love of Godhead. She is the dearmost friend of Krishna, and this is known throughout the world. 163. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhis Tabhir Yaeva Nijarupataya Kalabhihi Goloka Eva Nivasat Yakilatma Bhuto Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who resides in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure and who embodies the ecstatic potency, Ladhini. Their companions are her confidants, who embody extensions of her bodily form and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. Purport. This is a quotation from the Brahma Samhita 537. 164. That supreme ecstasy of Srimati Radharani is the essence of spiritual life. Her only business is to fulfill all the desires of Krishna. Text 165. Srimati Radharani is the topmost spiritual gem, and the other gopis, Lalita, Vishaka, and so on, are expansions of her spiritual body. Text 166. Srimati Radharani's transcendental body is brilliant in luster and full of all transcendental fragrances. Lord Krishna's affection for her is like a perfumed massage. Purport. Sugandhi Udvartana refers to a paste made of several perfumes and fragrant oils. This paste is massaged all over the body, and in this way the body's dirt and perspiration are removed. Srimati Radharani's body is automatically perfumed, but when her body is massaged with the scented paste of Lord Krishna's affection, her entire body is doubly perfumed and made brilliant and lustrous. This is the beginning of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's description of Srimati Radharani's transcendental body. This description, found in verses 165 to 181, is based on a book by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, known as Premam Bhoja Marana. Prema Bhoja Maranda. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's translation of the original Sanskrit reads as follows. The love of the gopis for Krishna is full of transcendental ecstasy. It appears to be a brilliant jewel, and enlightened by such a transcendental jewel, Radharani's body is further perfumed and decorated with kumkum. In the morning, her body is bathed in the nectar of compassion, in the afternoon, in the nectar of youth, and in the evening, in the nectar of luster itself. In this way the bathing is performed, and her body becomes as brilliant as the Chintamani jewel. She is dressed in various kinds of silken garments, one of which is her natural shyness. Her beauty is more and more enhanced, being decorated with the red kumkum of beauty itself and the blackish musk of conjugal love. Thus her body is decorated with different colors. Her ornaments embody the natural symptoms of ecstasy, trembling, tears, jubilation, stunning, perspiration, faltering of the voice, bodily redness, madness, and dullness. In this way her entire body is bedecked with these 9 different jewels. Over and above this, the beauty of her body is enhanced by her transcendental qualities, which constitute the flower garland hanging on her body. The ecstasy of love of Krishna, the ecstasy of love for Krishna, is known as dhira and adhira, sober and restless. Such ecstasy constitutes the covering of Srimati Radharani's body, and it is adorned by camphor. Her transcendental anger toward Krishna is embodied as the arrangement of the hair on her head, and the tilak of her great fortune shines on her beautiful forehead. Srimati Radharani's earrings are the holy names of Krishna, as well as the hearing of his name and fame. Her lips are always reddish due to the betel nut of ecstatic affection for Krishna. The black ointment around her eyes is her tricky behavior with Krishna, brought about by love. Her joking with Krishna and gentle smiling constitute the camphor with which she is perfumed. She sleeps in her room, the abode of her bodily aroma, and when she lies down in her bed, which is pride itself, the transcendental variety of her loving ecstasies is like a jeweled locket in the midst of her necklace of separation. Her transcendental breasts are covered by her sari in the form of affection and anger toward Krishna. Her stringed instrument, known as the Kachapi Veena, is her fame and fortune, which dry up the faces and breasts of the other gopis. She always keeps her hands on the shoulder of her gopi friend, who represents her youthful beauty. And although she is highly qualified with so many spiritual assets, she is nonetheless affected by the Cupid known as Krishna. Thus she is defeated. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami offers his respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani, taking a straw in his mouth. Indeed, he prays, O Gandharvika, Srimati Radharani, just as Lord Krishna never rejects a surrendered soul, please don't reject me. This is a summary translation of the Premamboja Maranda, which Kaviraj Goswami quotes. I'm going to stop here. It's 8 o'clock. We started a little late, but this is so intense, so rich and deep, thick. We'll just leave it at that for now, and ask if there's any reflections or anything that stuck out in the mind that one wants to discuss. Srimati Radharani ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna ki jai. Gaura Prem Anandi Hari Hari Bo. Maybe because we were late, everyone went home. What do you think? No. 17. That's pretty good. The devotees who are there regularly, every day, they are getting a taste. They're getting a taste for hearing about Krishna. And whether we can completely understand it or not, that is the goal of life. To actually to get a taste for hearing about Krishna, to relish hearing about Krishna. And when we come to the point where we can remember all these things all the time, then we will have reached perfection. In the meantime, I guess we can just hear like this, or aspire to hear like this 24 hours a day. Hare Krishna. I guess the thing that's most important about this section is to always remember the beginning explanations of Rämänanda Roy about Krishna. Because he went through all of the rasas, and now Lord Chaitanya has asked him to speak more, and he's beginning to explain the glories of Krishna and then the glories of Radharani. So these things cannot be understood by someone who is still in the material world. But we can try to hear them and appreciate them. That's what we can do. And by that process, gradually, we become more and more attracted to Krishna, and eventually when our attraction is complete, and we will be thinking of Him all the time, and we can't stop thinking of Him, it's not that we're trying to, then we will reach Vastu Siddhi, and be able to see Krishna face to face, and be with Krishna, and exchange our loving relationship and transcendental loving service. So that's the goal, and that's a pretty high goal. That's the highest goal that exists. But I got to admit, where are you, everybody? They're afraid to venture into this realm, maybe. Rasika Shiromani, that sterling sound engineer for the Caitanya-caritämrta.
He says, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, my sincere and humble obeisances to you.
Hare Krishna, Rasika.
I am especially struck by your comment that, quote, we can experience the transcendental pleasure of the rasa of these pastimes by simply and sincerely hearing them. Unquote. Of course, hearing means also applying. Can you speak to this subject of applying these pastimes?
Well, it's not exactly that you can apply the pastimes. That's a misconception. It's not that we can apply the pastimes, but we apply the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahäprabhu, which come down to us through the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan and through the previous acharyas down to our spiritual master. And particularly in our case, these purports, Srila Prabhupada's purports, are the transparent, the medium by which we can apply the instructions Prabhupada wrote the Krishna book first, practically, because he wanted, before he started he had already done the first canto, but then the next was the Krishna book, because he wanted to make sure that we got the proper understanding of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, just in case he couldn't live long enough to finish it, because it was such a huge task. So, yes, hearing means doing. So, when we hear these pastimes and the explanations of these pastimes, and we accept them for what they are, if we accept them with love and affection, with devotion, without argument, without trying to spin the meanings to get some meaning out of it that will make us appear to be more knowledgeable than others, or for whatever reason, whatever ulterior reason, then, according to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, we actually get the understanding just by the process of hearing. But that means that we have to hear it purely, with a pure heart. The first step in that instruction is to follow the 4 regulative principles strictly, rigidly. Srila Prabhupada says success is guaranteed for the rigid practitioner. When we can not go with the body, the mind, or the words into any sinful attraction, or even by sinful attraction we mean attraction to anything other than Krishna. This is accomplished by following the regulative principles, by chanting Hare Krishna, and by engaging our mind and our senses in the service of Krishna, guided by the instructions of Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual master, our initiating spiritual master. And like I said before, it's a revelatory process. That relationship is there already in our hearts, and it has been covered by the material energy, by the external energy. So the heart has to be cleansed of material desire, which starts from following the regulative principles, and then continues as we learn the art of controlling our mind and senses when we're doing our daily duties according to our birth and place in the world, our position in the world. And gradually we become more attached to Krishna by hearing about Krishna, because, as we just heard, he is all attractive. But if we are not attracted, it means we are still attracted to the material world. And to the extent that we are attracted to the material world will be the extent to which we will not be attracted to Krishna. So it begins by practice. Sadhana bhakti means to act as if we are attracted to Krishna by performing devotional service, by worshiping the deities, by keeping ourselves clean and neat, and constantly engaging in some activity that is related to the devotional service of Krishna. And in that way, keeping ourselves always connected with Krishna. As soon as you forget Krishna for an instant, then you're in Maya, and you cannot taste actual love. So in the 12th chapter of the Gita, Krishna explains pure devotional service in a very profound way. He begins by, Arjuna begins by asking him, which is more perfect, the person who is performing devotional service to you, or the person who is meditating on the impersonal feature And Krishna explains that the impersonal attempt to fully understand and absorb oneself in the non-perceptual, unmanifested, impersonal aspects of the Absolute Truth, if one does it perfectly for a long, long, long time, then eventually one will actually come to me, Krishna says. But then the next verse he says, Klesho dikatadaste sham avyakta sakta chetasam. That process is actually troublesome and extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the embodied soul. We're persons, and in the material world, we're thinking that that person is the material body. Therefore, to try to remove ourselves from the material conception of the body by meditating on the impersonal aspect, the all-pervasive impersonal aspect of Krishna, without connecting to the form of Krishna and the activities of Krishna and so on, it is troublesome. Therefore, Krishna concludes, just fix your mind on me and nothing else. Don't let your mind go to any other subject 24/7. That's perfection. And then he says, and if you can't do that, then practice the principles of sadhana bhakti yoga. And if you can't do that, then work for Krishna. That means do practical activities to assist the spreading of the Krishna consciousness movement, as Prabhupada says. Every organization needs man and money and organization and facilities, resources. So we work with those resources to get those resources exclusively for Krishna. And if you can't do that, then work, but give the fruits of your work to a noble cause. Social service, service to feeding the unfortunate, helping the unfortunate, and learn to become detached from the results of your work. And if you can't do that, then cultivate knowledge. Better than knowledge is meditation, which in this case means the contemplation of the knowledge, the deeper understanding of the knowledge. And better than that is to be free from the fruits of activity, of our actions in this world. Which leads to what? The next verse or the previous verse. Which leads to what? The previous verse before that. So if we do this process, depending on who we are and where we are and what we are materially, and with the idea of wanting to go to the next stage, then we're in the process of bhakti yoga. But the perfection of bhakti yoga is to fix oneself in thinking of Krishna. His form, his name, his qualities, his pastimes, his entourage, and his service. How to please him, how to please his senses. And we can do that, although that's extremely difficult, but we can do that through the auspices of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. By hearing from Caitanya Mahaprabhu, contemplating Mahaprabhu's life, and trying to follow in his footsteps means follow his instructions in whatever position of life that you're in, then we can understand Krishna and Radha and Krishna and Goloka Vrindavan. And especially in the Kali Yuga, there is no alternative. Following the four regulative principles and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra without offense, a prescribed number of rounds minimum, and then expanding that chanting and hearing and serving and praying and worshiping, so that all of your waking and sleeping moments are engaged in one of those 9 processes of devotional service, is the perfection. Hare Krishna.
Rasika comments, he says, I am intensely enjoying hearing these books as a service to your lotus feet and those of Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your mercy and instruction. My life is being transformed by this service of hearing CC and by following these instructions that you ceaselessly and mercifully give to us. I feel like I am getting so close but still getting further away.
That's the mystic nature of devotional service. The more you advance, the more you think you're not advanced. Good. That's a good sign, Rasika. Good sign.
And a comment from Rati Manjari.
Rati, you're still here. Maybe she came in late.
She says, thank you, Guru Maharaj. Please pray for us that we may become qualified to hear this nectar like you are hearing it. I offer you my humble obeisances again and again.
Hare Krishna, Rati. Thank you so much for your lovely devotional attitude.
And something from Bhakta Doug.
Bhakta Doug. We're gonna talk tomorrow at 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock. UK time.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj. I am struck by the descriptions of Srimati Radharani and her transcendental qualities. Can you explain how her bodily characteristics represent these qualities?
No, her body are those qualities. You cannot explain Srimati Radharani's body. Therefore, all you can do is describe the features of her body in terms of the most beautiful and wonderful and pleasant and things in this world. The only way you can understand that is to actually meet her face to face. Then you'll understand. But it's a gradual awakening that comes from serving her. Hare Krishna. Hare means Radharani. Hare Krishna. Through that sound, through chanting that sound without offense, our hearts become purified. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. And when our hearts are purified, the more purified our hearts become, then the deeper we will understand these concepts. It's poetic. They're poetic descriptions. They're not meant to be taken literally, but at the same time, they have a dimension to them, which can, if you're hearing with pure affection, can give you the understanding. But it's poetic. It's not mechanical. I'm not capable of understanding these things and explaining them to you in an esoteric way that can unlock some, door, and you'll be able to open the door and see Radharani for what she is. It's so high and so deep. But if we take the process sincerely, we will become encouraged just by a little drop. Just like we hear that Vrindavan is not different than the Boma Vrindavan here on the earth is not different than Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. And yet, it becomes covered by a film called Prauda Maya, like a curtain that covers us from seeing the original form of Goloka Vrindavan. And yet, even though we can't really see the Vrindavan for what it is so powerful and so potent that if we're just there in that region, through that Prauda Maya, we can experience something different. We can taste. Anybody who's gone to Vrindavan who's sincere can say that there's something different about the atmosphere. We've lived in Govardhan for many, many years, and I've seen with my own eyes how everyone who comes there, whatever their level of advancement, whatever they're coming there for, they'll go around Govardhan Hill in order for some political purposes or some family purposes or some educational purpose, to get a good wife, to get a good child, to get a good degree, to get a political position, to get wealth. All these things people will go around, but because of the nature of Govardhan Hill, the nature of the atmosphere of the place, they all become satisfied. Even if they don't get those things, they become satisfied because they're approaching Krishna for it. Akamo savakarmo va, moksha karma udaradi, tivrina, bhakti yogina, yajanti paramam. It means that whether you're completely pure, or whether you're completely contaminated, or whether you're just aspiring for liberation, anyone who's intelligent should worship Krishna. So you can't force that realization even by a lot of hearing. There's that verse. Give me that little note, that little book there. Yeah. There's this verse. Hope I can find it soon. I'm not paying enough attention to this actually. Nayam atma pravachanenam labhyo namedasa nabahuna shutena yam evaisha vinute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vivinute tanum swam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, or even by much hearing. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. That's the Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3. So, yes, we must hear and hear and hear and hear, but it's not just because you're hearing and hearing and hearing that you're getting it, that you're getting the realization. But what it does mean is that when you do that, Krishna becomes attracted to you, because you're becoming attracted to hearing about him. And when he's satisfied enough that you've given up everything else, and you only want to hear about him, you only want to please him with whatever you do, then he'll choose you. And then your hearing becomes something else. And you can get it directly from the hearing. But it's not just from the hearing, it's from Krishna choosing you for the quality of your hearing. Therefore, there's another verse that describes that the only, medium of exchange, the currency that can buy it, is lobha, is greed. When you become so eager for it, just like a person who becomes obsessed with winning a gold medal at the Olympics in some event, he has to give his whole life to it. He has to convince other people to sponsor him so that he can just concentrate his energy on practicing, jumping over a bar or throwing a big metal ball or farther than anybody ever has before, or running from here to here faster than anybody ever has before, at least faster than anybody did on that day, on the finals of the event in the Olympics, just to get the gold medal at the Olympics. So if you have to work that hard, or to get a Grammy Award, or to get, to play in Carnegie Hall, a piano concert, or whatever, or become the president of a country, or whatever, you have to, you have to work really hard. You have to dedicate everything to it. So Krishna consciousness is like that. You dedicate everything to it. And then Krishna will become attracted to you. And when he chooses you, then you will be able to understand the most esoteric features of these pastimes of Radha and Krishna. In the meantime, keep hearing. What is that verse, that famous verse that I never can remember because I've got an old brain? I thought I wrote it down just recently. Maybe not. Here's a nice one. There is no knowledge as pure as the name. There is no vow as powerful as the name. There is no meditation more effective than the name. Nor is there any fruit greater than that attained by the name. There is no greater renunciation than the name. There is no greater peace than the name. In this world, there is no greater pious activity than taking the name, nor is there any quicker progress than in the name. The name is the highest liberation, the highest freedom, the highest destination, the highest peace, the point of no more searching. The name is the highest devotion. The name is the purest inclination of the jiva. The name is the highest love, the direct remembrance of the Lord. The name is the cause of all causes, the Supreme Lord, most worshipable, and is a form of Guru, the form of, and is a form of Guru to bring one to the Lord. And I'm sorry that I forgot to write where that's from. I forgot to I'll have to look it up. Therefore, the conclusion is namaparada yuktanam namamyeva agamyaham. I never can remember the last two lines. Anyway, it means that if the name is meant for even those who are offenders of the name. Because if you keep chanting the name and don't stop, especially if you can chant 24/7, then the name is the only thing that's powerful enough to remove the offenses and be able to give you direct realization that Krishna is the name. And with that, I will close our tonight's session of hearing of Caitanya-caritämrta, the most nectarian discussions between Sri Chaitanya Mahäprabhu and Rämänanda Roy. And they're still going on. We'll hear more tomorrow. Lucky us. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Oh, wait, there's more.
There's a few comments, I think. I don't think there's any questions.
We have a few comments. Okay.
Noel Craver
Noel, Haribo.
says, I want to hear these pastimes all day, every day. The flow and consciousness of Srila Prabhupada and his books inspire me infinitely. Thank you for reading and sharing with us each day.
Thank you for even saying that. And thank you for aspiring for that. You have made my day. Thank you. That's my goal.
From Gopakanya Devidasi.
Gopakanya Devidasi.
She said, I can say at least I'm addicted with your LSD loving service and devotion of this transcendental readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Maybe one day by your mercy I get purified and deeply and sincerely appreciate those leelas of the Lord and his pure devotees, especially Srila Prabhupada.
That aspiration is actually not different than the realization, and it will come with time. Hare Krishna.
She had a second comment also. She says, thank you, dear Maharaj. This loving readings of Srila Prabhupada's books with your pure and sincere appreciation of those gifts of Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you, dear Maharaj. Thank you again and again and again. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.
A comment from Rati Manjari.
Mm.
She says, yes, I came in a little late and I had a frazzled day trying to work in my overheated apartment with my frazzled mind. But the supreme nectar of this reading, which you are faithfully rendering, is saving my day, as well as it is embarrassing to me. By hearing this, at least I feel encouraged that I am dedicating my life to a most glorious goal, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. And she also comments the verse you were speaking of is from Harinam Chintamani.
Well, that's from Harinam Chintamani.
So
yes.
Believes it is.
I think she's right, because I remember I was reading that book when I wrote it down. Well, thanks, Rati. Don't think I don't appreciate it. And actually, the pleasure that you get from seeing others waking up to the fact that these books are the goal, to get an attachment to hearing Prabhupada's books specifically. Because when we do, we hear from Prabhupada because he worked so hard to read these books. And it's our duty to work as hard to try to understand them and enter into them. So the gold, the credit goes to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta-vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. See you tomorrow night. Same time. I don't suppose you know. Same place. Same station. Same subject. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.